Hi everyone, this is Rio on Paper, and today we will be swatching the second half of my red inks. There's a couple bottles here, some samples, a lot of Diamine, but also some other brands. These reds, where the reds we did the first time are very much red, these reds will also sometimes be a little bit more orange leaning, brown leaning, purple leaning. We are getting very much into the territory of the Bordeaux burgundy reds, so there will be a lot of possible discussion on whether some of these are actually considered a red, but still these are all the ones that I do think can be classified as reds. So these we will be swatching on the right hand page of this journal. This is my little ink exploration journal, which is a Hobonichi A5 notebook that I just stamped with lots of stamps on the front. What else do we have today? We have a glass of water for cleaning my dip pen. We have my trusty dip pen, which is a Pilot Iro Uchishi in fine. We have my makeshift sample file holder. And we have a towel that is getting progressively more colorful with every time I swatch any inks. So that's fun. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first ink of the day is Berlin Notebooks Fox No. 6. I wanted to try a sample of this ink because it reminded me a lot of a very popular Diamine ink, and I wanted to compare them. Fox No. 6 is a beautiful unsaturated red with tones of orange and even some brown. When it dries, it develops a bit of dark sheen. The ink that Fox No. 6 reminded me of is of course none other than Diamine Ancient Copper. When I bought this, the 30ml bottle was out of stock, so I got this gigantic 80ml bottle. But oh well, I love these big Diamine bottles, so it's okay. Ancient Copper is another unsaturated red with strong hints of orange and brown. It develops a coppery brown sheen that is lighter and a bit warmer than Fox No. 6's. Diamine Cardinal was released as part of the 2022 Green Ink Event, and while I would classify this as a lighter red ink, I can appreciate why others may call this a dark orange. It's a fairly bright ink that develops a subtle coppery sheen. Diamine Blood Orange is part of the 150 years anniversary collection. It's in that same category as Cardinal, being somewhere between a red and an orange, but it's a very different ink. Blood Orange being much darker and less saturated. It has a bit of dark brown, almost black sheen. Diamine Vintage Copper was introduced as part of the 2021 Red Ink Event calendar. It is again a color that lies somewhere between red, orange and brown. In my own swatches I find it more red, while in some of the images online I would definitely say it's an orange ink, so I leave it up to you what you want to call this. This ink has gold shimmer. The shimmer isn't overly present, resulting in a nice balance between the shimmer and the base color. Next up we have another very popular, very well known Diamine ink, and that is Oxblood. With Diamine Oxblood we are entering the territory of the burgundy Bordeaux reds, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say it now. If any of these next inks are more purple than red to you, I see you, that's a very valid opinion. But over to Diamine Oxblood, this is a beautiful dark ink and it has some really interesting sheen. In that the sheen is visible in quite large areas of the swatch, however it isn't as bright as with a lot of the other inks, it's more of a subdued green sheen. The next ink is Sailor Ume. Ume is a little more red than Diamine Oxblood. Ume means plum in Japanese, which I think fits this color perfectly. And where Oxblood has a subtle sheen, Ume's sheen is, well, anything but subtle. It's a bright green sheen that is also very visible in writing, at least on paper such as Tomari River paper. Our next ink is Diamine Maple Leaf. Maple Leaf is a Cult Pens exclusive ink that, together with 2 other inks, makes up the Autumn Tones collection. And Diamine Maple Leaf is a shimmer ink. It's not a very saturated Bordeaux red, with a ton of gold shimmer. Then we have Barock Bordeaux. This is actually the only Baroque ink I have, and as the name suggests, it's a Bordeaux red. What I like about this ink is that it has a coppery brownish sheen that goes really well with the base color of the ink. The only downside perhaps would be that this ink is really dark, so in writing you won't always see how pretty this color is. Next up we have our last Diamine ink font ink that has made it to the list of reds, and that is Diamine Bah Humbug. Bah Humbug was introduced last year in the purple ink font, and I have had the most trouble deciding whether this is a red or a purple. Ultimately I went with red based on a little test swatch I did without any of the shimmer. It's definitely in that Bordeaux area, but the lighter the swatch, the more red undertones you can see. Bah Humbug has a chameleon shimmer that is predominantly pinkish, and that shimmer makes the ink look more purple than it actually is. At least that's my 2 cents. Sailor Ink Studio number 930 is a tad darker and a tad more purple than its cousin Sailor Ume. This Ink Studio ink has a ton of green sheen that is very bright and very visible in writing as well. Our last ink for today is Platinum Cassis Black. This is a very unique ink that behaves quite differently from all the other inks on the page. It starts out very light, but as it dries, its color gets darker, almost as if it's ripening, and it shades almost all the way to black. In writing, the shading won't be quite as dramatic, but it's still visible even in a fine nib. And like the previous inks, this one is somewhere between red and purple. And that's another 12 red inks. I would love to hear what your favorite red inks are. I think from the ones we swatched today, I'm a big fan of the Berlin Notebook Fox number 6 and the Diamine Ancient Copper, and then the Barock Bordeaux and the Platinum Cassis Black as well. Make sure to watch the last clip of the video, which is all of the dried swatched inks, in which you can see all of the shading, the sheening, and all of that shimmery goodness. If you want to see more ink swatches, consider subscribing to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!